Eben Byers. In 1927, Eben Byers was the kind of man who seemed untouchable. He was wealthy. He was a former amateur golf champion. He had everything. And then someone handed him a small bottle of water and told him it would make him feel like he was 30 again. He believed it. The water was called Radithor. It was sold as a miracle health tonic. What it actually contained was radium, a radioactive element dissolved in distilled water. The company claimed it energized the body, restored strength, and reversed aging. Byers started drinking it in 1927. Then he kept drinking it, every single day, sometimes 2 or 3 bottles. He told his friends. He gave bottles to women he wanted to impress. Over the next few years, he drank more than 1,400 bottles. Radium does not hurt you immediately. It builds up, slowly. It settles into your bones because the body mistakes it for calcium. And once it is there, it starts breaking things down from the inside. By 1931, Byers had lost 40 pounds. His jaw had deteriorated. His skull was collapsing. Holes were forming in his bones. A Wall Street Journal reporter who visited him near the end wrote that the man who had been a perfect physical specimen was now barely recognizable. Byers died in April 1932. He was 51 years old. Because his body was still radioactive, he was buried in a lead-lined coffin. The Wall Street Journal headline the next day read, "The radium water worked fine until his jaw fell off." Qin Shi Huang. He was the first emperor of a unified China. He commanded armies, built roads, and ordered the construction of one of the largest burial complexes in history, guarded by over 8,000 life-size terracotta soldiers. But he was terrified of death. Qin Shi Huang sent ships across the sea looking for mythical islands where immortal beings supposedly lived. He ordered alchemists to create elixirs. He funded the search for eternal life the way other emperors funded wars. And then someone told him about mercury. Mercury was seen as magical in ancient China. It shifted between liquid and solid. It moved without being pushed. Ancient thinkers believed something so unusual must contain power that normal substances did not. Qin Shi Huang started taking pills made from cinnabar, a red mineral that is essentially mercury sulfide. He also reportedly consumed liquid mercury mixed into elixirs prepared by court alchemists. Mercury is one of the most toxic substances a human body can absorb. It damages the nervous system. It destroys the kidneys. It causes tremors, confusion, and organ failure. Qin Shi Huang died in 210 BCE while traveling on a royal tour. He was 49 years old. Historians believe mercury poisoning contributed significantly to his death. His tomb has never been fully excavated. Ancient records describe rivers of mercury inside it. Still there, still toxic, more than 2,200 years later. The man who swallowed mercury to live forever may have been killed by the very thing he believed would save him. Serge Voronoff. In the 1920s, a French surgeon named Serge Voronoff had a theory. He believed aging happened because the body's glands wore out, and he believed he knew how to fix it. His solution was chimpanzee testicle tissue. Voronoff began performing operations where thin slices of chimpanzee testicle were surgically grafted onto aging men. He called it rejuvenation surgery. His patients were mostly wealthy. Many of them swore it worked. The newspapers loved it. Demand grew so fast that Voronoff set up a chimpanzee breeding facility in Italy just to keep up with supply. By the late 1920s, he had performed the operation on hundreds of patients. Other surgeons across Europe copied the method. Then the results stopped holding up. Follow-up studies showed that patients who reported improvement were experiencing nothing more than a placebo effect. The body's immune system rejected the animal tissue within weeks. Nothing was absorbed. No real rejuvenation occurred. By the 1940s, Voronoff had become a figure of ridicule in the medical community. He died in 1951, still insisting his method had worked. Hundreds of men paid to have dead animal tissue stitched into their bodies. They believed it because they were afraid of getting old. And fear has always been easier to sell than truth. The Jiajing Emperor. He ruled China's Ming dynasty for 45 years. He had more power than almost any person alive during his time, and none of that power stopped him from being afraid of death. The Jiajing Emperor came to power in 1521 and became increasingly obsessed with Taoist immortality practices. He surrounded himself with priests who promised elixirs could extend his life. These elixirs were not safe. Court records describe mixtures containing mercury, arsenic, lead, and powdered jade. He consumed them regularly for years. His obsession went further. Palace records contain accounts of disturbing rituals that affected many of the women living in the imperial court. The full details are debated by historians, but what is agreed upon is that his pursuit of immortality created an atmosphere of fear for those around him. In 1542, a group of palace women tried to strangle him in his sleep. They nearly succeeded. He survived. 16 women were executed. He did not stop the rituals. He died in 1567 at age 59. Medical historians believe chronic poisoning from mercury and arsenic-based elixirs worsened his health in his final years. He wanted to escape death so badly that the people closest to him decided death, his, was the better outcome. John R. Brinkley. In 1918, a man calling himself Dr. John R. Brinkley arrived in a small Kansas town with a fraudulent medical degree and an idea that was difficult to believe. He claimed he could restore male youth by surgically implanting goat testicles into human patients. Not a metaphor, real goat testicles, cut from live animals, placed inside men who wanted to feel young again. Brinkley charged $750 per surgery, serious money at the time. Word spread. He built a radio station to market his procedure. In the 1920s, radio was the most powerful mass communication tool available. Brinkley used it brilliantly, giving health advice on air and advertising his own treatments to a national audience. Medical boards investigated him repeatedly. His Kansas medical license was revoked in 1930. He fought back and nearly won the Kansas governor's race twice, running on radio popularity alone. His operations caused real harm. Infections, complications, and deaths were linked to his procedures over the years. By the early 1940s, lawsuits had drained his fortune. He died in 1942, under federal investigation. He never found the cure for aging, but he found something else. That when people are afraid of getting old, they will believe almost anything from someone who speaks with enough confidence. He did not need medicine, he needed a microphone. Diane de Poitiers. In 16th century France, Diane de Poitiers was considered one of the most striking women at court, even into her 60s. She was the powerful mistress of King Henry II, more than 20 years her junior. She was said to exercise daily, bathe in cold water, and maintain unusual discipline for the time. But there may have been another reason she looked the way she did. Historical accounts suggest she consumed a drinkable gold solution daily. The belief behind it was ancient. Gold does not rust, tarnish, or decay. Physicians and alchemists of the era believed gold's resistance to corruption might be transferred to the human body. Those wealthy enough to afford it drank it. Diane de Poitiers was wealthy enough. In 2009, researchers examined a strand of her preserved hair. The gold content was extraordinarily high, hundreds of times above normal levels. Gold in those concentrations is not harmless. It damages the liver, weakens the immune system, and has toxic effects on multiple organs. Some researchers believe the pale, almost translucent appearance she was famous for, often described as a sign of beauty, may have been a symptom of chronic gold poisoning. She died in 1566, around age 66. Her famous pale skin may not have been preserved youth. It may have been the look of someone slowly poisoned by what she believed was keeping her alive. Charles-Edouard Brown-Séquard. He was not a fraud. That is what makes this case different. Charles-Edouard Brown-Séquard was a respected scientist with genuine contributions to neurology and physiology. He understood the body in ways most people in 1889 did not. And then, at age 72, he injected himself with a mixture of crushed dog and guinea pig testicles, blood, and seminal fluid. He announced the results in front of the French Society of Biology. He said the injections had restored his strength, reversed his fatigue, and made him feel decades younger. The audience was stunned. Doctors across Europe did not wait to find out who was right. Within months, thousands of patients across Europe and the United States were receiving versions of the same extract. Later analysis showed the mixture contained far too little testosterone, or any active hormone, to produce a real physiological effect. The improvements Brown-Séquard reported were almost certainly placebo. His body, believing it had received something powerful, behaved accordingly for a time. He died in 1894, 5 years after the announcement. But his instinct had pointed in a real direction. The idea that glands produce substances affecting the body was correct. It just took another 40 years for science to isolate testosterone properly. He was not entirely wrong. He was just decades too early. And his method was entirely wrong. One of the first attempts at hormone therapy in human history was essentially a 72-year-old scientist injecting himself with crushed animal organs and declaring it a success. Wiley Brooks. Wiley Brooks claimed humans did not need food. Not less food, not special food, no food at all. He taught that the human body, if properly aligned with cosmic energy, could survive on air, light, and spiritual frequency alone. He called the practice breatharianism. He gave lectures. He sold courses. He charged thousands of dollars for workshops where followers could learn to stop eating. He began promoting these ideas in the early 1980s and continued for decades. He appeared on television. He built a following. In 1983, investigators caught him leaving a convenience store with a chicken pot pie and a Slurpee. His response was creative. He said the modern world's negative energy field made it temporarily necessary to consume certain items. He later refined the explanation and claimed specific fast food meals vibrated at a frequency that helped practitioners maintain spiritual alignment. He named a particular burger chain meal as cosmically acceptable. The logic shifted to fit whatever he needed it to fit. Breatharianism has been connected to deaths in multiple countries. People who genuinely stopped eating while following these teachings have died of starvation and dehydration. Adults and, in at least one documented case, a child, died because their families believed food was unnecessary. Brooks himself, based on available evidence, continued eating. He told people hunger was a spiritual weakness. He collected money. And then he explained why his cheeseburger was a vehicle for cosmic energy. Elizabeth Bathory. The name Elizabeth Bathory has survived for more than 400 years. She was a Hungarian noblewoman, born in 1560, one of the most powerful women in her region. She managed vast estates and held authority rare for women of her era. What she is remembered for is darker. The legend, and it is important to call it a legend because significant parts remain historically disputed, claims she tortured and killed young women and girls and bathed in their blood to preserve her youth. The historical record is complicated. Investigations conducted after her husband's death in 1604 produced witness testimony and confessions, some obtained under torture. Accounts varied. Victim counts in different sources ranged from dozens to hundreds. Historians have debated how much of the record reflected reality and how much reflected political motivations. Bathory controlled enormous wealth, and her arrest was convenient for powerful figures who stood to benefit. What is agreed upon is that she was accused of serious crimes. She was not tried in open court. She was walled into a room in her castle in 1610, where she died 4 years later. The bloodbathing claim specifically has never been conclusively proven from primary historical sources, but the legend survived because it expressed something people already believed, that the powerful would do anything, including the unthinkable, to stay young. Whether it was true or not, the story endured, because the fear underneath it was real. The alchemists. For nearly 2,000 years, across China, the Middle East, Europe, and South Asia, an entire field of study was organized around one question: could death be reversed? In ancient China, Taoist alchemists believed certain mineral combinations, refined through long heating processes, could produce a substance that halted aging. Many formulas contained mercury, lead, and arsenic. Emperors consumed them. Scholars consumed them. Some died quickly. Others declined slowly over years without knowing why. In medieval Europe, alchemists chased the philosopher's stone, a substance said to transform metals into gold and produce an elixir of immortality. Serious thinkers, not just charlatans, devoted their lives to the search. Paracelsus, one of the most influential figures in early medical history, developed treatments using mercury and arsenic, convinced that the right dose of a toxic substance could heal rather than kill. What they accidentally built was the foundation of modern chemistry. The laboratory equipment, the systematic testing, the careful recording of reactions. These practices survived even when the theory collapsed. The people doing the drinking did not fare as well. The search for immortality helped create chemistry, but the people swallowing the elixirs were often the first proof that the formula was not ready.
Brian Johnson.
In 2021, Brian Johnson sold his payments company for $800 million. He was 35 years old. By most definitions, he had already won. He decided to spend what came next trying not to age. Johnson launched a project called Blueprint. The concept was simple: subject every measurable part of his body to scientific testing and optimization, then use the data to slow or reverse biological aging. He assembled a team of doctors. He followed a strict plant-based diet with precise caloric control. He took over 100 pills and supplements daily. He wore monitoring equipment while he slept. He tested his blood and organs at regular intervals. The reported cost was around $2 million per year. He tracked metrics most people never think about: the health of his retinas, the flexibility of his arteries, the speed of cellular repair. He published results publicly. He said his goal was not to look younger. It was to have the measurable biology of an 18-year-old. In 2023, he participated in a plasma exchange experiment involving 3 generations of his family: himself, his teenage son, and his father. The idea was to study whether young plasma transferred to an older body would produce measurable anti-aging effects. Animal studies had shown some results. Human data was mixed. Johnson stopped after 1 session, saying the numbers did not support continuing. He kept everything else going. Scientists who have commented on Blueprint note that some individual elements have real evidence behind them. Others are less supported. With so many variables changing simultaneously, isolating which intervention is responsible for what becomes nearly impossible. He is not afraid of death the way others on this list were. He is afraid of losing to something he believes should be solvable. That might be the most modern version of this story. Cryonics. When James Bedford died in January 1967, his body was not buried or cremated. It was cooled to -196 degrees Celsius and placed in liquid nitrogen inside a steel container. It has remained there ever since. Bedford was a psychology professor with terminal cancer. He chose cryonic preservation not because he believed it would certainly work, but because the alternative offered no possibility at all. He was the first person to be frozen this way. The argument behind cryonics is direct. If future science can repair biological damage, reverse the effects of death, and restore memory and identity from a preserved brain, then preservation is a rational choice. 0 chance versus a small chance is still a real difference. Facilities like Alcor Life Extension Foundation in the United States operate under strict preservation protocols. When a patient reaches legal death, a response team begins cooling the body and replacing blood with a cryoprotective solution designed to reduce ice crystal formation. Ice crystals damage tissue. Preventing them is essential to whatever future science might attempt. The cost ranges from around $28,000 for brain-only preservation to over $200,000 for full-body preservation. As of the early 2020s, more than 400 bodies and brains had been stored at facilities across the United States. The scientific objections are serious. The current freezing process still causes cellular damage. There is no proven method for reversing that damage. There is no demonstrated technique for reviving a human brain or restoring personal identity after decades of storage. Critics call it a business selling hope to people unwilling to accept reality. Supporters say that medicine has repeatedly done things once considered impossible, that today's objections resemble objections that have since been proved wrong. James Bedford is still frozen. He has been frozen for nearly 60 years. No one knows what another 100 will bring. Cryonics is not a cure. It is a bet placed in the only currency that matters at the end of a life: time. Some people freeze themselves because they want to live forever. Some do it because doing something feels better than doing nothing. Cryonics is not proof that death can be beaten. It is proof that some people are willing to wait inside a tank and let the future decide. Every generation looks back at the people who drank mercury, swallowed radioactive water, or paid surgeons to stitch animal organs into their bodies, and thinks, we would never do that. But the fear underneath all of it has never changed. Humans do not only fear dying, they fear becoming weak. They fear becoming ordinary. They fear being forgotten before the story is finished. That fear has funded empires, built laboratories, and filled the pockets of frauds. It has pushed serious scientists into their strangest experiments and turned ordinary people into believers in impossible cures. The methods get more sophisticated. The fear stays exactly the same. And as long as it does, the next cure is already being sold somewhere.